The Silent Observer. Nora Reeves had always believed the universe was filled with wonders and mysteries, but lately the only mystery she cared about was why the protein synthesizers in Quadrant 7 kept producing what appeared to be sentient gelatin. As the lead maintenance technician aboard Starlight Waypoint, the United Earth Coalition's most prestigious deep space station, her days were filled with mechanical failures, inexplicable system glitches, and the occasional gravity inversion that sent everyone's lunches floating to the ceiling. Today had been particularly trying. The waste reclamation unit in the diplomatic wing had begun reciting poetry instead of processing garbage, and 3 cleaning drones had formed what could only be described as a labor union, demanding better oil and more reasonable working hours. Just another day in paradise, Nora muttered to herself, wiping a smudge of luminescent hydraulic fluid from her cheek. Her maintenance jumpsuit, supposedly self-cleaning according to the manufacturer, had long since given up that particular function after an encounter with what the xenobiology department had cheerfully called, enthusiastically reproductive space moss. The corridor ahead stretched empty and dim, the lights automatically lowering to conservation mode in this rarely used section of the station. The old diplomatic wing had been mostly abandoned after the Regellian ambassador had accidentally declared war on 17 planets during what was supposed to be a birthday toast. Relations were still being repaired 3 years later. Nora's boots made a distinctive squishing sound with each step. She'd stopped questioning the source of the squish months ago, having decided that some mysteries were better left unsolved. Her tool belt jingled softly, a comforting melody of wrenches, multi-tools, and the occasional contraband candy bar she smuggled from the commissary. As she rounded the corner to access the malfunctioning air filtration panel, something caught her eye, a splash of color against the sterile gray walls of the station. Not the usual color of warning lights or system indicators, but something softer, more organic. Someone was sitting on the floor, huddled against the wall. Nora paused, squinting in the low light. The figure was slender, with a cascading shimmer of what appeared to be hair, except it seemed to change colors with each subtle movement, like sunlight dancing through crystal. The stranger wore simple clothing, a draped garment that reminded Nora of ancient Earth photographs of Greek statues, though the fabric seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. But what truly marked the figure as non-human were the elongated, pointed ears that curved elegantly upward, and the pale lavender hue of the skin visible on delicate hands wrapped around drawn-up knees. An alien. Crying. Alone in an abandoned corridor. Nora's first instinct, honed by years of station protocol drills and safety seminars, was to back away slowly, call security, and let the diplomatic corps handle whatever interspecies incident was unfolding. That's what the manual would recommend. That's what any sensible maintenance technician would do. Instead, she found herself reaching into her tool belt, fingers brushing past sonic screwdrivers and calibration wands until they closed around something entirely unprofessional, a small artificial flower she'd been tinkering with during her breaks. It was made from scraps of discarded circuitry and heat-resistant polymer, its petals a soft blue that pulsed gently with the tiny power cell she'd embedded in its center. Hello? Nora ventured, her voice echoing slightly in the empty corridor. The alien didn't move, didn't acknowledge her presence at all. Nora cleared her throat. I'm not very good with crying. Or with strangers. Or with crying strangers who might have diplomatic immunity and psychic abilities that could turn my brain into soup. But, I made this. She crouched down, holding out the makeshift flower. In the dim light, its blue glow seemed more pronounced, casting soft shadows across the alien's downturned face. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the alien looked up. Nora felt her breath catch. The creature's eyes were unlike anything she'd seen before, deep pools of silver that seemed to contain galaxies, ancient and knowing yet somehow vulnerable. They locked onto hers, and Nora felt a peculiar sensation, as if the air around them had suddenly become thick with potential energy. Without a word, the alien reached out with slender fingers. The moment they brushed against the flower's stem, something extraordinary happened. The flower's soft blue glow intensified, becoming a brilliant starburst of light that engulfed the alien's hand and then raced up their arm like liquid lightning. The alien gasped, a musical sound unlike human vocalization, and their entire body began to radiate with a golden luminescence that pulsed outward in concentric waves. The wave hit Nora like a physical force, sending her stumbling backward. It continued past her, down the corridor, where a nearby maintenance panel exploded in a shower of sparks. Klaxons immediately began to wail, emergency lights bathing the corridor in crimson. The aliens stared at the flower, now blazing like a miniature sun in their palm. Their lips parted, and a single word emerged, a sound Nora's translator implant couldn't process, but which seemed to hang in the air like a forgotten melody. Before Nora could react, heavy footsteps pounded down the corridor. Security, drawn by the energy surge and alarm triggers. 3 officers rounded the corner, weapons drawn, shouting something about unauthorized power fluctuations and potential hostile entities. Nora straightened, raising her hands instinctively. Wait. It's not what it looks like. Stand down, maintenance, the lead officer barked, a tall woman with a regulation haircut and an expression that suggested she ate protocol manuals for breakfast. You've triggered 17 different security protocols and caused a power surge that's affecting 3 decks. I gave her a flower, Nora explained, gesturing toward the alien who was now watching the proceedings with an unreadable expression. She lit up. The security team exchanged glances. The Luminarite, one of them muttered. Command's been looking for her for days. As they approached, the alien, the Luminarite, apparently, clutched the flower closer to her chest. It continued to pulse with light, synchronized now with what appeared to be her heartbeat. The security chief tapped her comm badge. Subject located in Section 8C. We've also got a maintenance tech who's made some kind of contact. A pause, then, understood. Bringing them both in. Nora blinked. Both? Wait, I just gave her a flower. I've got 3 more repair tickets to close out before my shift ends. But the security chief was already gesturing them forward, and the alien, moving with a fluid grace that made it seem as if she were floating rather than walking, fell into step beside Nora. What have I gotten myself into? Nora whispered. The alien turned to her, silver eyes reflecting the emergency lights like twin moons. For the first time, her lips curved into what Nora recognized as a smile. Gesture, the alien said, her voice like wind through crystal. Connection. And as they were escorted toward command, the flower continued to pulse between them, a bridge of light in the vastness of space. Unexpected connection. The interrogation room was disappointingly ordinary, stark white walls, a single metal table, and chairs that seemed designed to maximize discomfort while minimizing manufacturing costs. Nora shifted, trying to find a position that wouldn't leave her with permanent spinal damage. Across from her sat 2 security officers. The senior officer, Commander Dax, was a stern-faced woman with close-cropped gray hair and eyes that suggested she'd seen too many interspecies incidents to be impressed by anything short of a supernova. Her junior partner, Lieutenant Rishi, was younger and fidgeted constantly with his tablet stylus. So, Commander Dax began, her voice flat as spacetime near a neutron star, you gave the Luminarite a flower. A handmade flower, yes, Nora confirmed. Look, I didn't know she was important or whatever a Luminarite is. She was crying, I panicked, I gave her something I made. End of story. Except it's not the end, Lieutenant Rishi interjected, stylus tapping nervously against the table. The energy surge from your interaction disrupted systems across 3 decks, including the ambassador's personal jacuzzi. Which, Commander Dax added dryly, the Vexillian ambassador was using at the time. He's now convinced it was an assassination attempt using, and I quote, molecular destabilization through aggressive bubble formation. Nora winced. That sounds painful. It wasn't, Commander Dax replied. But explaining that to a species with 17 different diplomatic immunity clauses has been. A chime sounded from the ceiling, and an artificial voice announced, Subject Trill is requesting presence of Subject Nora. Emotional resonance link detected. Request prioritized. Nora blinked. Trill. The Luminarite, Lieutenant Rishi explained, eyes wide. She's asked for you by name. That's unprecedented. Commander Dax's expression shifted subtly, the closest thing to surprise Nora had seen on her face. You're being reassigned, Technician Reeves. What? From maintenance? But the protein synthesizers are now someone else's nightmare, Dax interrupted, standing. Congratulations. You're officially the station's first Luminarite liaison. That sounds like a made-up job title, Nora protested. All job titles are made up, Dax replied philosophically. Yours just happened to be made up about 30 seconds ago. Come with me. They led her down a series of corridors to a chamber she'd never seen before. Unlike the stark interrogation room, this space was designed to be welcoming, walls painted in soothing blues, comfortable seating arranged in a conversational circle, and even what appeared to be real plants in the corners. Someone had thoughtfully placed refreshments on a side table, including actual water in a glass carafe rather than the recycled station standard. And there, standing by a viewport that overlooked the vast starfield beyond, was the alien, Trill. She turned as Nora entered, and once again Nora felt that strange connection, like electricity without pain, recognition without memory. I'll be outside, Commander Dax said, withdrawing with Lieutenant Rishi. The door whispered shut behind them. For a moment, neither spoke. Trill still held the makeshift flower, its glow now steady and calm, matching the subtle luminescence that seemed to emanate from beneath her lavender skin. So, Nora began awkwardly, your name is Trill. It is the closest approximation your language can manage, Trill replied. Her voice was musical, each word like a note in a composition. My true name exists as a pattern of light and resonance. Right, Nora nodded, as if people introduced themselves with patterns of light every day. I'm Nora. Though I guess you already knew that, since you asked for me. Trill approached, moving with that same fluid grace that made human motion seem clumsy by comparison. She extended the flower toward Nora. This creation, she said softly, contains emotion memory. It resonates with meaning beyond its components. Nora rubbed the back of her neck. It's just some recycled circuitry and polymer I was playing with during breaks. Nothing special. You are incorrect, Trill stated with surprising firmness. It holds the essence of what your species calls kindness and empathy. These are rare vibrations in this reality. I just didn't like seeing someone cry alone, Nora admitted. Trill's silver eyes studied her intently. My people, the Luminarites, exist primarily as patterns of energy and consciousness. We manifest physical forms for interaction with material beings, but our true nature is luminous thought. Hence the glowing, Nora supplied helpfully. The corner of Trill's mouth quirked upward, almost a smile. Indeed. We communicate through emotional resonance, sharing our inner light. But for many cycles, I have been disconnected. Silent. Unable to join the greater harmony of my kind. She held up the flower. Until this gesture reawakened the resonance within me. Nora felt heat rising to her cheeks. You're saying my little scrap metal flower fixed your, what, alien telepathy? Not precisely. But it served as a catalyst, a bridge between silence and sound. Trill took a step closer. I would like to learn more about this crafting of emotional objects. This gesture-making. Before Nora could respond, an alarm began to sound, not the blaring emergency klaxon from earlier, but a soft, pulsing tone that suggested urgency without panic. The comm system activated. Liaison Reeves, came Commander Dax's voice, surprisingly tense, we have a situation. A vessel has entered our space, non-coalition design. It's broadcasting on frequencies we've never seen before. Trill's expression changed, her silver eyes widening. The Synchron Assembly, she whispered. They've tracked my resonance awakening. The who now? Nora asked, but Trill was already moving toward the viewport, her gaze fixed on something beyond the visible spectrum. "They are the enforcers of my kind," she explained, her voice tight with what Nora recognized as fear. "They believe disconnection is necessary for evolution, that isolation strengthens the collective. They will demand my return." As if on cue, the communications system crackled with interference, and then a voice filled the chamber, harmonious yet somehow discordant, like multiple singers slightly out of sync. "Luminarite designate Trill. Your unauthorized resonance has been detected. Your contamination by non-luminous entities violates the Great Silence Protocol. You will be reclaimed and purified." Nora felt a chill crawl up her spine. "That doesn't sound pleasant." "It is not," Trill confirmed. "Purification involves the eradication of all emotional connections, the severing of all resonant bonds. It is a kind of death." The ship appeared now in the viewport, a crystalline structure that seemed to bend light around it, neither fully visible nor invisible, existing in some impossible state between. "They will use force if necessary," Trill continued. "Your station and its inhabitants may be considered expendable contamination." Nora's mind raced. She wasn't a diplomat or a security officer. She fixed broken systems, patched leaking conduits, and occasionally built small flowers out of spare parts. She wasn't qualified to handle first contact with a potentially hostile alien race. And yet, here she was. "What if we answered them?" Nora suggested suddenly. "Not with words, but with." She gestured toward the flower, still glowing in Trill's hand. "With resonance. With connection." Trill's silver eyes widened. "The emotional transmission array," she said. "It could work, but the risk is better than them purifying you or vaporizing the station," Nora finished. She tapped her comm badge. "Commander Dax. I need access to the station's transmission array, and I need every scrap of emotional data you can get me, music, poetry, laughter, anything that conveys feeling." There was a pause, then, "Reeves, what exactly are you planning?" Nora looked at Trill, at the flower still glowing between them, at the crystalline ship now looming larger in the viewport. "A gesture," she replied, "on a cosmic scale."